Extensive migrations by 1000 CE, Bantu-speaking people spread across sub-Saharan Africa, introducing agriculture, ironworking, and herding, which displaced foreign-based societies and boosted population growth. Banana cultivation. Bananas arrived from Southeast Asia via Malay seafarers 300 to 500 CE, allowing expansions into forested areas and supporting population growth, reaching over 22 million. Social and political organizations. Early Bantu societies were kin-based, governed by family groups and village chiefs. Over time, population pressure led to the formation of small kingdoms like Ive and Benin, and large states like the Kingdom of Congo, which had a centralized government and a world currency system. Urban centers. Cities like the in Mali became trade hubs connected to vast networks, laying foundations for future cities like Timbuktu. Social structures, societies including ruling elites, artisans, merchants, peasants, and slaves, kinship, gender roles, and age grades played major roles in smaller communities. Land was communally owned. Labor and gender roles. Men handled ironworking and leather tanning. Women farmed, raised children, and made pottery. Blacksmiths were especially respected. Slavery. Slaves were mostly war captives, debtors, or criminals. The Islamic slave trade, 750 to 15,000 CE, moved over 10 million Africans abroad. The Zanj Revolt, 869 to 883 CE, in Mesopotamia, was a major slave uprising led by Ali bin Muhammad. Religion. Most Africans believed in a creator god, spirits, and ancestors. Diviners acted as intermediaries during misfortune. Christianity in Africa spread into sub-Saharan Africa through Aksum, modern Ethiopia, by the 4th century. Ethiopian Christianity blended Christian teachings with African traditions and built monumental churches like those at Lalibela. Around the 7th and 8th century, Muslim merchants brought Islam to sub-Saharan Africa. They traveled across the Saharan desert using camels and by sea along the East African coast. Over time, Islam became a big part of life in many parts of Africa, though people mixed it with their local traditions. The Sahara wasn't a big barrier. Nomads had lived there for thousands of years. They traveled, traded, and shared ideas. Trade across the desert was small at first, but things changed when camels were introduced. Camels made it easier to cross the desert since they could go a long time without water. By around 300 CE, people started using camels more than horses or donkeys. When Arabs brought Islam to North Africa in the 7th and 8th century, it also helped connect Africa to larger trade networks. Muslim traders crossed the desert to West Africa looking for gold. They found cities like Gao where they traded goods like copper, salt, iron, and beads. At the time, Ghana, an old kingdom, not the modern country, was the most powerful in West Africa. Ghana didn't have gold itself but controlled the gold trade. Traders came in camel caravans to get gold, and Ghana became rich by taxing the trade. It also traded ivory and slaves for salt, cloth, and other goods. Ghana's capital became a busy city, eventually became Muslim, which helped them build better ties with other Muslim leaders and traders. But they didn't force Islam on other people. Ghana later fell due to attacks and new states took over, most importantly the Mali Empire. Mali was founded by the son Dayada, the Lion Prince, around 1230. He united a large area and expanded trade even more than Ghana. Cities like Timbuktu and Gao became rich centers of trade and learning. Like Ghana, Mali's leaders supported Islam but didn't force it on anyone. One of Mali's most famous rulers was Mansa Musa, who ruled from 1312 to 1337. He was super rich and made a famous trip to Mecca, giving away so much gold that it lowered its value. After that, he built mosques and schools and brought Islamic scholars to Mali. Mali started to decline after his rule, and by the late 1400s, the Songhai Empire took over, but Mali's influence lasted. While West Africa was growing through desert trade, East Africa was going through Indian Ocean trade. Traders from India, Persia, and Arabia visited East Africa's coast for centuries. Local African groups like the Bantu people lived and traded there too. Over time, coastal communities became known as Swahili, meaning coasters. Their language mixed Bantu and Arabic. By the 10th century, many Swahili became Muslim and traded gold, ivory, and slaves for goods like pottery, glass, and textiles from Asia. cities like
Mogadishu, Mombasa, Zanzibar, and Kilwa
became rich and powerful. Kilwa, for example, was very wealthy and had stone buildings, mosques, and a population of about 12,000. Trade also led to powerful inland kingdoms like Great Zimbabwe. It had large stone buildings and became rich from gold, ivory, and slave trade. It, it controlled trade between the coast and the interior. Anyways, in both West and East Africa, a trade brought big changes. Rulers and rich traders became Muslim to strengthen their relationships with Muslim partners. Over time, Islam spread and became an important part of African culture, mixed with local traditions. By 1500, sub-Saharan Africa had many strong, unique, and globally connected societies.
Chapter 24, World War II. So, in 1931, Japan invades Manchuria, starting its imperial expansion into Asia. And in 1935, Germany annexes Austria and claims Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. And in 1936, Italy invades Ethiopia, which tested the United Nations response. And in 1938, Germany invades Poland, which then caused Britain and France to declare war. And in 1939, Germany remilitarizes the Rhineland, violating Treaty of Versailles. And in 1937 and 39, Japan expands into China and Italy annexes Albania. The long-term causes of World War II was the Treaty of Versailles, and it was the harsh terms that led to German resentment, extreme nationalism, which justified territorial conquest and suppression of minorities, and rise of militaristic and totalitarian regimes, which is Germany, Italy, and Japan, and the Great Depression, which was global economic instability, which led to unrest and rise of radical leaders. And the immediate causes were expansionist aggression by Axis powers, which was Germany, Italy, and Japan, and appeasement policies which failed to stop Hitler. And the trigger events was Germany invading Poland and Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. Effects of World War II, which was the defeat of fascist dictatorships in Europe, which was Hitler, Mussolini, and militarists in Japan, and massive casualties and destruction across Europe and East Asia.
The effects of World War II led to the defeat of fascist dictators in Europe and militarists in Japan, and led to the devastation and loss of life in Europe and Eastern Asia. There was also the development of nuclear weapons and atomic energy, which led to the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There was also a recognition of the Holocaust and Nuremberg trials that a lot of people didn't know about yet at the time, and the rise of US and Soviet World Union powers. The events leading to the axis of defeat include October 1944, when the US began to fight and retake the Philippines, February to March 1945, when the Battle of the Tujima occurred, and April to July, when the Battle of Okinawa happened, and May in Germany, when Germany surrendered and the fighting ended in Europe. Also July and August, when the US successfully tested the atomic bombs and then, like I said, bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in September, when peace treaty was officially signed.